me, if you would, in the spirit of prayer. We believe in you, God, maker of rainbows, spinner of chaos, weaver of stories, daredevil gambler. We believe in you, Jesus Christ, rabbi of the poor and carpenter of new creation. We believe in you, Holy Spirit, nudging discomforter, midwife of changes. We believe in the church as that group of people who have chosen to believe these outrageous, offensive, and wonderful truths. And so we thank God, this one God with many names, you, God. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of all of our hearts be acceptable to you, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. I'm going to do a little tech adjustment here because I'm on my own here. I'm going to do this. So it still happens once in a while. On an otherwise slow news day, some media person gets wind of a miracle story and runs a camera crew out to film the big event. In their most frequent incarnations, these momentarily newsworthy miracles usually take the form of a vision of the divine of sorts. Let's face it, though, these are pretty puny epiphanies. The face of Jesus miraculously appears in the cracked bathroom window of some rundown house. The image of a descending angel miraculously floating above the landscape scenery of some cheap painting. And of course, who can forget the miraculous transformation of a home-fried tortilla into an icon by the silhouette of Jesus that emerged upon its surface. These miracles usually leave us rolling our eyes. I mean, back in the day, God could appear as a pillar of smoke by day and fire by night to the escaping Israelites. Jesus could walk on the water, heal Bartimaeus' sight, and bring a dead child back to life in first century Palestine. And here we are with all of our wisdom and technology in the 21st century, squinting our presbyopic eyes in order to see a miracle on a piece of fried dough. Do miracles still happen? Or, as some cessationists claim, did God stop working through miracles after the apostolic era? This has been one of the biggest and longest running controversies in the church. For at least 500 years, believers have been asking, can God do miracles today? The Renaissance, the Reformation, and the Enlightenment each added more and more bricks to the walls of reason and logic and quantifiable evidence that the best and the brightest were helping to build between miracles and our daily lives. But it took the industrial area to really start erecting a miracle-proof barrier between the ongoing transformative work and presence of God in this world and the scientific view of the universe being developed. As these walls have grown higher and higher, the separation between those who continue to believe in the presence and possibility of miracles and those who utterly deny this kind of experience has become taller and deeper. How ironic then that as we move ever deeper into the postmodern, post-Christendom era, miracles are always making a comeback. Let's take, for example, the great debate over a supposed long ago miracle, the virgin birth. Few issues have caused such historic histrionics. Churches have been split and thousands of books have been written on the possibility or impossibility of a miraculous virgin birth. There have been heresy trials, denominational divisions, including our own Trinitarian-Unitarian split, and ruined ministries for the sake of this issue. The debate often has been ugly and nasty on both sides. Reams of papers and teams of scientists have marched before virgin birth believers, denouncing the belief in that miracle as anti-science anti-rational, and anti-intellectual. Unfortunately, many of the defenders of the virgin birth miracle consider such designations complimentary. The evangelicals and fundamentalists adhering to the old, not since the apostolic era mandate against miracles are just as restrictive and closed-minded as the clinical white-coated skeptics. So where does this leave us today? Well, we live in a world where science makes it possible for virgin births to happen every day. We call the process in vitro fertilization, and the results test tube babies. Isn't it rather amusing that those who refuse to admit the possibility of God doing a virgin birth are in a posture today of watching science do virgin births every day? Isn't it rather amusing that those fundamentalists who would refuse to allow God to perform miracles in the dawn of the 21st century have no problem at all with allowing human scientists to do the same thing? Why is it that science gets all the miracle-making, wonder-working powers and not God? Why is it that our science-laden spirits resist the idea that God can? How might we rethink miracles today? Well, surely miracles are not divine holograms floating in the sky or bizarre appearances in spaghetti bowls. So maybe it's as simple as this. A miracle is when God makes a way. As in Isaiah 43, God can make a way in our lives when there seems to be no way. As in, miracles are a sign of God's active presence and partnership with us, helping us to deal with the issues, remove the obstacles in our lives and in the life of the world. As in, God doesn't solve problems for us, God solves problems with us. In today's gospel reading, the miracles abound. When Bartimaeus calls out for help, many of the people with Jesus shout back, telling him to be quiet. But Bartimaeus knew that Jesus was the Messiah. He repeatedly called out to the Son of David, pleading for mercy. This is someone that the norms of society has left begging on the street. This is a man who has a disability that leaves him hurting and with obvious need, yet he's ignored, pushed to the outskirts, kept on the sidelines, and even as he asks for help, the crowd is unreceptive, not wanting to engage, and worse, seeking to silence him as he asks for change. Can you hear where I might be going with this? Beloved, we are the crowd, and we're uncomfortable when confronted by need. We'll go online to make a donation, but when face to face with a homeless person on the street with a sign asking for help, or a person with a developmental disability acting out in public, or an alcoholic or addict stumbling in the park, or a Black activist inviting us to check our white privilege, keep our white fragility to ourselves, and do our own anti-racist work, our discomfort and our privilege drives us to turn away. In the movement for Black lives and on the street, we avoid eye contact, ignore the person, and move to the other side of the street. Literally and figuratively, we silence the need and erase the human being with our privilege. Son of David, have mercy on me, Bartimaeus calls. And get this, in the version that we heard, Jesus was stopped in his tracks. Call him over, he tells the disciples. And here is an aspect of the miracle. When Jesus acknowledges this otherwise marginalized soul and involves his disciples in the process, the entire mood of the interaction changes. It only takes one leader to change the dynamic of a conversation or interaction. When Jesus calls Bartimaeus to himself and sends his followers to tell the man to come near, the atmosphere changes. Bartimaeus is no longer a nuisance. He's welcomed. His need is not too big or too messy or too difficult to be brought to Jesus. Miracle of miracles, as believers, right here, right now, this day, in this staycation, we too can lead a response that changes the dynamic, that acknowledges each person's value and need for God. We too can change the atmosphere and advocate for those who have historically been marginalized, for those who are most vulnerable in the areas of society that would rather ignore them, for all of those who have a desire to belong and be accepted, for all of God's children who are isolated and lonely, living with a disability. For we too can turn our attention towards those who have been pushed away and sidelined and left in need. Beloved, a caring presence can be a lifeline and a miracle, whether it's a hot meal brought to a lonely elder, eye contact and a few minutes of conversation with the homeless youth that you meet in Harvard Square, or an open mind and an open heart in your own journey to become an anti-racist. Because like it was with Bartimaeus, miracles are wrought from God. Maybe the most significant aspect of this miracle is the eruption from within Bartimaeus of such a powerful faith that it will neither shut up nor hold still. I want you to recall that in this healing story, Bartimaeus comes to Jesus. It's the miracle of his faith, a divinely given gift that makes possible the restoration of Bartimaeus' sight. In the life of this roadside beggar, God makes a way when there seemed to be no way. Now, I suspect you might be caught up short and stuttering if someone asked you point blank, what miracles has God performed in your life? We postmoderns haven't been taught to think about events in our lives as miracles. We've been trained to look for threads of logic, reason, and fact to hold the fabric of our lives together. But what if I were to ask you to close your eyes and seriously consider the personal presence of God in your life, the ways that God has been with you, shown you a way forward, whispered some hope in your ears? What if I asked you, where has God made a way in your life when there seemed to be no way? Where has God made a way in your neighborhood where there seemed to be no way? Or where is God making a way in our country where there seemed to be no way? If we were to practice thinking in terms of miracles, we would be surprised at how easily we can recognize and talk about the miraculous ways that God has been or is opening a way. You practiced during the children's message. My friends in AA have taught me to see this way. The fact that I have not found it necessary to pick up a drink or a drug for 11,935 days, that is a miracle. And because I've become practiced at seeing the places where God is making a way when it seems like there is no way, I do see the hand of God in this time of racial reckoning. Is it a miracle that the murder of George Floyd in the midst of the pandemic of 2020 has brought a commitment to a full-scale transformation of both America's enduring caste system and the racism that undergirds and enfleshes that system? It feels like a miracle to me. So let's practice in a real internal way, seeing some miracles. I want you to close your eyes if you're willing and hold that wonderful idea that God does and will make a way when there is no way. I want you to think about a time when someone held your hand. Has there ever been a moment in your life when the miracle of a compassionate, sympathetic touch has transformed solitary anguish into comforting companionship? Or perhaps the miraculous hand that you recall is very small, the instinctive grip of a newborn's reach, or the trusting squeeze of a grandchild's grubby paw. What handheld miracles have you felt? What about an incident when you couldn't stop laughing? Why do we always think of miracles as somber events? Maybe it was the quiet you realized was pervasive. Maybe it was the slowdown of our pace, or the lack of traffic when you went to the grocery store, or the number of people who are just walking with their children, or the reduction in the carbon emissions, or the birds that you could suddenly hear, or the shift in a personal relationship that came from having more time for being more dependent on each other. Or maybe you made a new connection, a new friend met or saw your neighbor in a new way. Or maybe during this staycation, you have had the eyes to see how much need is all around you. How much change is being called for? How many and how deeply human beings are being harmed by poverty and racism? Beloved, God makes a way when there is no way. It only takes one leader to change things. When Jesus called Bartimaeus to himself and sends his followers to tell the man to come near, the atmosphere changed. When we show up and see our neighbor's need, we can change the atmosphere. When we look for miracles, we can see miracles and we can witness to them. When we look for God's hand making a way, we can see the way. My beloved, let us go out into our families and into our neighborhoods and into our city and be the hands and feet of our Maker, following Jesus's way to make a way for all. For that would surely be a miracle. Amen.